another episode of Lost Like Mike. I'm your host, Mike Gonzalez. I'm back again for another installment. Thank you for coming by and visiting, for listening to me talk about the things that are going on in my life. And thank you for subscribing, liking, and messaging me at lostlikemike@gmail.com. I appreciate the communication. It's the first week after New Year's, after the New Year. I don't know why people say New Year's. I mean, obviously New Year's Eve, but I'm saying obviously New Year's Day, but I've often heard it referred to as New Year's. Probably incorrectly. I don't know. Anyway, first episode of the new year, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, before I get into a lot of odds and ends, I wanted to talk about the New Year's Eve show that I did. Goes to show you, I tell you, the weeks prior to the show, I think I talked a little bit about playing bass for the first time in a while and having to rehearse. And I was doing a lot of rehearsing and looking for a bass amp. And I bought a bass amp that was like way too big and looked way bigger than the picture. And then it was like a bed for roaches and stuff. And, you know, all of the different misadventures having to do with playing bass and learning songs and reviewing other material and the anxiety associated with it. And then I show up to the show. I mean, I'm actually driving to the show. And, you know, my cousin, right, Vince, where he plays the guitar, says that our second cousins, his nephews, were both going to show up. The lineup for our original band, Flesh Electric, was going to show up. That meant Jason, my second cousin, was going to show up and play drums. I knew that because he finally was able to commit. He was going to be able to play the show. And then, but his brother, Jacob, had heard that we were going to be playing downtown on New Year's Eve and thought it'd be cool to come and hang out and jam. And I played one song. I played one song on bass all night. And it sounded really good. And it was as if we've been playing every day together. We jammed. And it was super easy. It was a lot of fun. And it was no sweat. It was like probably more fun than even playing the two-man acoustic shows, only in the sense that it was easier. You know, I didn't have to play any instruments, just sing. I mean, just the one, just singing. And I could focus on that. And it was material that we don't normally do. So it was fresh and it sounded really good without the pressure, you know, to be good at an instrument that I don't play all the time, and to play full electric, full auto, you know, music that is a different animal than playing tambourines and acoustic guitars. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, but goes to show you, we often hype up the event that's going to happen, and we get ourselves all lathered up about is it, you know, the outcomes. Is it going to go this way, that way? We worry about the outcomes. And I'm not saying all the time this happens, but more often than not, things tend to work out, or things are going to happen the way that they're going to happen. And it's normally not as bad as the hype, because, you know, that's the truth, right? Because when you start off, you're like, oh, I hope it goes well, you know, and then you start thinking, well, you know, what if I forget a part? What if I mess up? What if I do this? And the next thing you know, you're getting booed off stage and people throwing tomatoes at you. You know, you hype it up to a point where where you did such a horrible job that you got fired and never can work again. You know, I know personally I have the ability to imagine fates far worse than reality. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I mean when I say things are often not as bad as we can make them out to be. So it was a pleasant surprise being out there and jamming with these guys. They're very, very talented musicians. All my cousins are. But there's a secondhand sort of, how do you say? There's a language that's spoken without words with these guys because they're seasoned, right? So I see them nodding at each other that they're going to extend a break, for example, or they're going to jam a piece in a different way. Like they'll make a hand motion and the other one knows that they're going to speed it up or drop it down and slow it down for dynamic effect. You know, and it's things that a shorthand language that you work out with guys that you play with for a long time. So it was fun to watch that. And anyway, it was a hell of a way to bring in the new year, to be making music that I could be, happy with. And for a highly anxious situation to be let go and not to be, because I think that whether we realize it or not, I think that when you're dealing with a situation like that where everything's heightened because you're very scared that something's going to go badly, like you have a presentation to do, and there's a lot of moving parts, and you want to make sure that everything goes really well, and I think that we have a tendency, even if it goes well, there's like this sort of, and I don't like to use the term like PTSD lightly, but I'm trying to signify the idea that you, even if something goes well, I'll give you an example. When I was in my senior year of college, we did this sales pitch presentation, and I told the story partially when it was when the professor chewed me out, and where he said we were all doing this dry run. We're doing this, just, you weren't supposed to practice it. It was just like, let's find out where you're at, and everybody kind of was fumbling through their presentation because they were looking at their notes and kind of giving it the first shot. And my professor ripped me and was like, "You can't be mumbling the whole time, and you're looking at your notes too much." And I was like, "Homeboy, you're saying that you wanted to see where we're at without preparation, just our loose notes that we had, like." But I just took it, and I was like, all right. He's like, watch speech, people practicing their speeches, and watch, like, he was talking about, look at Obama and how he pauses and takes time to articulate his next thought. And if you ever watch Obama, he's really good at that, like where he'll say something and he'll stop and he'll continue, he'll stop and he'll continue because he's wanting to get it right. Not a whole lot of, whatever. And I get it. Look, I'm doing a podcast pretty much live. I don't even have really good notes. It's all, so I know that I do a lot of ums and uhs and whatever, and it's okay. I'd rather that than it to be scripted and sit here and say, and today I will talk about, I can't stand all that. Where the jokes sound canned and everything sounds, anyway. I won't get into all that. But I digress. Point being that guy shook me. He made me angry. And when I get angry, I often over-prepare. And I remember for my speech classes that if you review something like to the point of nauseam and you practice and it becomes second nature and you can say it frontwards, backwards, then the anxiety goes away. Or at least the fear of failure goes away, and it's fear of judgment and other things that you can't really get rid of. But you're a better equipped to deal with, because you're like, look, it's like Ray Charles says, it's going to do what it's going to do. Now, whether or not they like it, that's a whole other thing. But at least you know you're putting your best foot forward. Okay. So on the day of the speech, I went up and I had my squad with me, or whatever, the team that we had to do our presentation. And I nailed it. Point by point, I had it all, it wasn't rushed. It was Barack Obama-fied. I did the whole thing, and knocked it out the park. Okay. But it's like you store all of that anxiety and that fear of things going badly, even though they don't go badly. It's almost as if it has to go somewhere. So it vomits out, and I'm saying, like, probably after, in a lot of ways, it comes out in irrational sort of anxiety vomit, as I like to refer to it as, and it's just a part of human nature. It's just, but so it's always nice when it's unexpected, made easy, like in that case in New Year's Eve, where I'm carrying my bass and I'm thinking about, okay, I remember this song, went over this song, went over that song. I gotta remember that key change, gotta remember this. Okay, everything's gonna work out, it's gonna be fine. You're prepared, and you have all that pent up stuff that you're kind of reviewing. And I'm showing up early. I got a new shirt. Whatever, right? And then you show up, and then they're like, yo, this person's gonna take that weight off your shoulders, and he's got you. So all you do is sing your butt off and have fun. That's different, right? Then you had all this that you thought you were going to have to do, and it's sort of released, like, oh, snap, I don't have to do any of that. And that's what I'm trying to get to, that incredible feeling of relief, that unanticipated relief, which is a different type of release than get a job well done. Because even then, I like I said, I think you still have that residual thing. Well, I hope that was well articulated, because I felt like I got the message across. So a little bit, there's a story that's going to go on about last night, but I don't want to talk about that, because I feel like when I talk about that, I'm going to randomly talk about things associated with that for the rest of the way out. You'll understand what I mean shortly. But what I want to say is that during that, and maybe you can Tarantino some of the ideas of what goes on in this dream I had last night. All right. First of all, I didn't get a lot of rest last night. But at one point I knocked out, and I fell asleep, and I had a series of nightmares. And when I get into the story of what happened last night, that's probably where the anxiety and fear and subconscious sort of issues came from. But I don't think that it was the content of the dream, that it did not come from the event, or I would just say the event first and then tell the dream, because then you'd be like, oh, well, that's probably because of that, and that's probably because of that, that kind of thing. But when I woke up from the dream, I got up, and sometimes when you have like a bad dream, you have to stand up and get a glass of water, or take a bathroom break or whatever, then come back to bed. You kind of want to have a separation. Sometimes you wake up and you want to go right back into whatever dreamland vision you were having. But in this particular, when nightmares and certain things, I get up. But this one was the type where I got up and I walked right to my dry erase board, and I wrote down a series of phrases that came from the dream. And okay, I'll set up the context of the dream first. I was in this big auditorium, and there was people there. When I went in from the back, they were having like a musical production. I kept wanting to say Oklahoma, but whatever. They were having like a musical going on stage. And then it kind of like smash cut, and then there's people in the audience that were there hanging out, and there was something having to do with being chased and trying to hide by going through there. Okay. Anyway, so right, there was a lot of chasing going on and hiding. That was the nightmare part of it. But I remember I was talking to the people in the audience. Like I was standing on stage, kind of giving a TED talk. And I was just saying things. And when I woke up, I was thinking, I said, I need to write this down. I need to write down what I was telling these people. And to be completely honest, I have an abstract idea of what, after looking at it and reading the stuff, I think I have an abstract idea of what I was trying to say, but and in a way it makes sense. Anyway, so the first thing that it says is, it says Star Wars and the sweet spot, right? And then I wrote down this other word that I can't read. If you're listening only, I'm attempting to read the board from where I'm sitting, and then it says self-awareness. Oh, okay. So it says Star Wars and the sweet spot between self-awareness and freaking out. So I believe what I was trying to talk about, because when I think of Star Wars, I think about balance. There was this guy, Freddie Prinze Jr. He often is heard talking about Star Wars being a movie about balance, and so that's the first thing that pops in my mind when I think of that, of the sweet spot being. So I think that he's talking, in my mind, I'm thinking that I was talking about finding the balance between, right, the sweet spot between self-awareness and not freaking out or whatever it is. So yeah, apparently I was having this TED talk about, like, and in retrospect, it makes sense. I was talking to my mom earlier in the week. Well, I think it was earlier that day. We were talking about how certain situations, like, my example was I lived out in the country for a little baby bit. When I say out in the country, I mean just really out there. Oh no, look at that. I just looked out the window, everybody, and I'm looking at an Amazon truck parking. Oh no, my dog's asleep right here. Okay, good. I thought, if this animal senses that Amazon is here, then there's going to be a whole bunch of barking, and it's going to be ridiculous. And I don't want to have to pause it because I'm right in the middle of a thought, but it interrupted me anyway because I broke thoughts to look out the damn window like an idiot. Anyway, but I was telling my mom that when I was living out in the country, it was so deep in the country, out in the hill country, that one night I was out. There's no street lights, no buildings, no nothing, just 20 acres of property. And you would look up and it was like blankets upon blankets upon blankets. I mean, when I say millions and bajillions, you just could see stars for days. And it was too much to handle, too much to look at, too much to take in. I felt like a speck of dust, and it was overwhelming. And I was like, no, dude, I got to go inside. I can't look at this or whatever. And I was telling my mom about this idea that I remember going on this vacation out on the beach, and we were on this particular beach, and on this clear sky day, where it was this ocean of calm water, right? And then a baby blue sky that went on for days, just gone into the horizon. And this vast beach of sand. You know, it's one of the things about being nearsighted with astigmatism. Sort of, it's very easy for me to see, for things to look kind of, to take on a different sort of life, because it doesn't have the crisp definition of detail in certain instances. So for my eyes, it just looks like sand for days, meeting up with water for days, meeting up with sky for days. And then if you really sort of let yourself feel a part of it, it almost seems like you're just floating in space of these different shades of colors, of blues and beiges. And it was funny because I was talking about this, and then my mom says, yeah, I remember one time I was feeling kind of weird on these prescribed drugs. And no, no. I was like, no, I'm not having a trip, Mom. You know what I mean? Like, she's like, it's like, I remember this one time I was, seeing colors, and I was like, no, never mind. But sometimes, and it's usually when you feel like a small part of a larger picture that this phenomena happens. But I was trying to tell my mom about this and explain what I'm kind of getting at. So when I think about this dream, I think that that's kind of where it's at, where we're all teetering this balance between, our questions about the universe, or our place in the vastness, and the meaning behind things, and in these existential sort of conundrums. And then we find ourselves, you have to ask yourself, sometimes you want the answers, and sometimes you don't really want to know the whole picture. You know what I mean? Who was that one that used to say that? There was this cartoon character that I think it was Amy Poehler, right? And she would say, I would show you the whole thing, but it would blow your mind, or something like that. Like, she would say it. It was cute. But anyway, like, you don't really want to know the whole thing. And it got us talking, me and my mom, about taking psychedelic drugs, and if we really would want to do that, and how our aversion to that, where it comes from. I don't like, I want to, it's, at one point or another, you can't control that, right? If you really want to see things as they are, it's not going to be on your terms. And that's a very scary notion to think about, right? It's like, you want to see, like, how much of the universe do you really want to see if you're like afraid of flying in airplanes? You know what I mean? You got to kind of put it in perspective. Anyway. But, so I wrote it on the thing, and I think it's funny. It just, I think that's what it means. Self-awareness and freaking out. There's a balance between, you want to know you want to know the secrets, but do you really want to know the secrets? You know what I mean? Anyway, but I woke up being chased, and that part of it, that anxiety, the anxiety nightmare, it came from last night, and I'll tell you what happened. So 1:30, 1:40, no, like 12:30, 12:40 at night. In my neighborhood, quiet. Everybody's asleep in the house. The doorbell goes off. Ding dong. And then a second or two, and then ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, like 4 or 5 times. And we're like, so my wife's like, the doorbell's going off. You need to, go out there and, see what's going on, right? I mean, my kung fu is not that good, man. Anyway. So I went over to the front door. We have this glass, like kind of on the way top. It's sort of like a decorative glass, where it has like stained glass cut out in different shapes. But in the center, you can look out, and it's about over 6 feet of the door, is where it's located. So it's not like I'm not gonna look out the damn thing and then the guy's looking at me in the face. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's up there. You have to. I'm 6'1" and I have to stand up on my tippy toes to kind of look out and down. So I go and I look and I don't see anybody. Couple important things to note right away. Okay, first of all, this beast that I call my golden retriever dog, that barks at squirrels, birds, people walking by, barks at everything. The doorbell rings 5 times and she stumbles around the corner with like her hair all matted and one ear sticking up and looks around going, huh? Somebody say something? And doesn't know what to do with herself. Matter of fact, she does not bark until an hour later when everything's, back to quieting down and she realizes she wants to go outside to go to the bathroom. Okay. Second thing is that we don't have blinds on our windows nor curtains, except for I have curtains in the bedrooms or whatever. It's a decorative thing that my wife chooses, right? And from a distance, you can't see in the windows. They have like they're treated somehow where you don't just can see in. But if you're close, you can see in. Okay? And I don't like that setup. Oh, that's 2. Okay? Number 3, our weapon situation is pretty weak in the house. We'll get into that in a bit. So, all right. So I come around to one of the bedrooms so I can get a different look out to see more. Because where the front door is to the house, there is a window right next door to it. But if the guy's anywhere right there, he's going to see my dumbass standing at the window going, anybody there? So I wanted to go to a separate room where I could peek out of a curtain and get a glimpse of like a panoramic of the front yard with the street that goes in front of my house, okay? So I come around to the bedroom, I look out into the street with a dimly lit street light and look out, and I see a guy, right? And he's wearing like a hoodie jacket, wearing a backpack, obstructing his face, right? Where he has it covering his face. And he's like walking, pacing at the bottom of my driveway. Like an excerpt from The Purge. I mean, just 1 o'clock at night, what are you doing, dude? Like pacing outside my house. Like, and I go back and tell my wife, yo, this dude's, he's not gone. He's there. But he's not in front of our house. He's down at the base of the driveway. And he's, looking all kind of like whatever. Suspicious. But again, obstructing his face, can't see his hands. I can't tell ethnicity. I can't tell anything. Features. I can't get a description because, he's purposely, in my opinion, shading himself, being shady. All right. So then she calls non-emergency police and just says, hey, yo, some guy like rang our doorbell a bunch of times and he's sort of like walking around. It's like nearly 1 o'clock in the morning, and we just want to know if you could send somebody to drive by. And because look, let me tell you something. First of all, if I lived off a main street, you know what I mean, then maybe the likelihood of somebody with a car breaking down or lost walking may find themselves in front of a door and need to knock, right? But at 1 o'clock in the morning, I live deep into a neighborhood, right? So 2 left turns, here we go, right turn, I don't know how many, and you're deep inside this neighborhood. There's no reason somebody's ringing your doorbell. This dude is not up to no good at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm sorry. I can say that definitively. I'm in the middle of the damn block. You know what I mean? My car was broken into, truck was broken into down the street. This guy's not up to any good. And the argument was, she said, well, do you think that maybe if that person was just going to break into the house, they would have just, why would they ring the doorbell? And I hear all the time about like home invasions where they knock on the door, they ring the doorbell, the person of the house opens the door, yes, how can I help you? And they shove themselves in or shoot their way in or kick the door in and take what they want from the house. You hear it all the time. Matter of fact, a lot of times you hear it like that you can't do anything back or like, okay, not to mention the fact that, well, nobody in the right mind would open the stupid door at 1 o'clock in the morning, but people apparently do. So there's that. Anyway, so Julie watches the guy and he starts walking away from the house. And then she sees on the ring, and this is another thing too. We paid for a Ring camera, right? One of those cameras that sit at your door. That when somebody rings the bell, it's supposed to get like a visual. You see them like on TikTok all the time. The commercials are like reasons to have a Ring phone, and then it says like, you left this package outside, or I found your wallet, sir, or all these dumb reasons. Well, the guy rang the bell like 5-6 times, right? And it got no footage of him. No footage. The job of the Ring camera, and it didn't work, right? So this isn't a review either way for Ring cameras. I'm sure they've come in handy in a bajillion cases. I'm just saying that in this particular instance, it failed. And when my wife went to check that first thing, it's like, there's no footage. There's not, the guy's, afterwards, when it's live, she can see the street, right? And she sees the cop drive by. And of course, I'm like, all right, look, I'll just stay up for a while, let y'all go to sleep. Because my daughter wakes up and she's like, kind of getting anxious about the situation because she heard the doorbell ring. And she's not dumb. She understands that there's no good reason to be ringing somebody's doorbell at 1 a.m. And we're trying to keep her cool about it. And we're like, it's just go back to bed. Daddy's here, Mama's here, and we're fine. But she couldn't go back to sleep. And she stayed up for quite a while we were trying to put her down to sleep and assure her that everything's all right. And meanwhile, my wife's texting me and saying, hey, could you call the police back, find out if anything came of the situation? Like, did they find somebody or whatever? And so I called back. I said, look, I know when we initially spoke to you, we didn't want any follow-up, but, for peace of mind, what transpired regarding the call that was made, earlier? And the dispatcher was like, yeah, so we sent an officer through the neighborhood and nobody was seen. So our neighbor had on their video, they saw the person, but again, just a, a hoodie jacket, a hoodie pulled over the head, looking down in a way, and with a backpack. It's hard to explain like that sort of feeling of powerlessness. Um, you know, you don't want. I don't think that. I think that violence is one of those things where there's no delicate way to talk about it. So one should be able to protect themselves, and it's a sad truth that bad things happen out in the world every day, and that there's a lot of bad people. And the fact that we have to own guns and just have that discussion of where to store the guns, how where to store the bullets, who goes, what's the safe room, et cetera, et cetera. It's a sad idea, man. And it's not something that I would want to do. I don't want to talk about like those things. But it's one of those those necessary evils, the conversation to have anyway. When they talk about gun laws and restrictions and so on, who's not listening or caring? The bad people, right? The perpetrators of evil are not going, ooh, I hope that gun law doesn't pass. They're not thinking, that's going to put a real wrench in my ability to get a gun on the black market. They're just, it's non-issue to them. They're going to get their weapons the way that they've been getting their weapons, And it's a sad truth, and it sucks, and it pisses me off, but it is what it is. A lot of times you can't believe everything you read on the internet, but somebody was saying how all these pendejos were shooting off guns on New Year's Eve, and a little girl was killed from a bullet coming down, because it's customary, for all these people to shoot guns at midnight for the new year, right, in celebration, and the bullets come down eventually, and this little girl was just out. I don't know what the hell they're doing out at midnight. That's people's prerogative. And bullet comes down, shoots her, and then she gets taken to the hospital and dies first thing in the new year. And that's random. It's stupid things happening with guns, but in that instance, when the purge is happening outside your house, and some dude with his hoodie pulled over his face is ringing your doorbell and assessing whether he wants to kick in your door and looking in your window and seeing if you have any cool stuff to steal, and you're in that position thinking about how you would defend your wife and daughter from an intruder, and you're contemplating the difference between having a loaded gun or a bat or a knife, or like some kind of Krav Maga, you're going to want that loaded gun, I'll tell you what. And if you say that you wouldn't want that, you might have to reassess that position. And I get it. There's stories like, the There was a man that there was armed assailants that burst into his house. He was a doctor, and he drew down on them with his gun that he had in his house, and they shot him dead. And the question is whether or not they would have shot him if they would have come in and just to take what they were going to take and leave. Listen, it's like my mom always said, you never take out a weapon unless you're taking it out for lethal use, because that's what they're doing. You know, it's not for show. Nobody's brandishing a gun and saying, "Give me all your money or else." And then when they're leaving, be like, "Just kidding, this is just for show. Sorry, Especially, I mean, considering it's loaded, right? I mean, and I'm not even saying that. I'm not even saying they're coming in with guns. I mean, this purge dude that I'm seeing outside my window, maybe he was just, well, this looks like a nice home there where people would let me use their phone and I could get back on my merry way. If you believe that, then that's on you too. I'm just saying, at that moment when I was sitting there thinking about this dude loitering around my house, and in point of fact, I knew that he was just contemplating whether or not it was worth the effort. I'm telling you, half the time, people don't break into homes in Texas. Half the time they don't do it is because they don't know how armed the people that live in that house are. It's not because they're good people. There's a reason why more often than not they're hitting up the cars that are outside the house or looking for unlocked or abandoned homes, because they feel that people are armed and dangerous here in Texas. It's sad, but it's true. I mean, I'm sure you'd have to look up the statistics, but I know I was looking at one statistic today because I was looking at the type of guns and things to have in the house. And they were saying that 2/3 of the population are armed, to protect their families or whatnot. And I don't want to hear. I was talking to my mom about the movie The Joker, or just Joker, with Joaquin Phoenix, and how he's. I mean, he has sincere mental illness, and that's one thing. But in the movie, they touch base on the frustration of the poorer class people that are struggling to make ends meet or have jobs or what have you. And here's the thing: you can have frustration with the current system. You can have frustration with your lot in life. You can. I've been there. I've been at the point of bankruptcy. I've filed bankruptcy before. We could tell that story one day if you're ever interested, or maybe I've touched base on it at one point or another. But I've had my struggles. I've been unemployed. I've had to work in temp jobs and stand in line at 3 a.m, to make $30, $40, $50 working all day and in temp jobs just to pay through and provide food for my family. And I have had options of, would you want to sell drugs or do or rob or steal or whatever, and it's the harder choice to say, no, I guess I'll put in the work. I'll do what I have to do to 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 fulfill my end of the social contract and to not rob and steal. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm saying I understand that frustration. And I've had my issues or like dealings with ethical situations that you find yourself in when you haven't had you work for everything, and it's taken away by bill collectors and by uncaring entities, corporations, or businesses that just see you as numbers, and you having to pay your way out. And I've had to wrestle with ethical issues all my life, just like these people do, just like everybody does. But the idea is that we've created a culture where we care about the why behind the evil, and there's always a motivation. Always, there's always a reason. Even the crazy person that pleads guilty by reason of insanity, that was his reason, because he lost his sense of right and wrong. He blacked out. And he just did evil. Some people, they're whacked out on drugs and addiction, and they just need the next fix, and they can't help themselves. They just have to get their fix, so they don't have a means to make the money, so they whatever. But it's the addiction. It's the sickness, right? Everything that has a reason behind it, right? But my thing is that at one point or another, we just have to say there's rules that are put in place to protect us. There are rules that are put in place to protect everyone. Well, I can't just walk into somebody's house, whether it's I can't walk into a gated community and a super high-tech security protected mansion and break in and steal their things, and I can't break into a Section 8 poorhouse and steal their things. I can't go in and mutilate a family in a super rich neighborhood, and I can't do it in a poor neighborhood either, because there's rules and laws that exist to protect us from doing that. And I get that we have frustration with inequality and with disparate, like the difference between rich people and poor people and the high paid executives, and that's not what I'm talking about. And then disparity between the richest and the poorest. I'm not here to change the world in one podcast. I'm just saying that I don't want to hear people justifying why they're robbing me. I don't want to hear people's, well, we never got a fair shake in life, or I didn't choose to be addicted to these drugs, and I don't think that that's a conversation that I need to have. I've had my battles with addiction, and it's not to say that I always tell my daughter we're always just a few bad decisions away from being without and being poor, or being compromised, where we have to make tough decisions. We're fortunate in certain areas right now that we're able to have food on our plates and a roof over our head, but it's only through the hard work and through being fortunate in certain respects, taking jobs that we don't necessarily, we didn't necessarily wake up one day and say, I really dream of having this job. I've been fortunate enough to get this job, but it wasn't necessarily the same job that was on the back of my notebook when the teacher said to draw what we would want to be doing in 15 years. I drew myself singing and playing music in front of a big audience, which I kind of do, but you know what I mean? I don't in the sense of like Eminem, who gets to, he says he clocks in and out from 9 to 5 and just goes into the studio and does nothing but make music every day. That sounds like a pimp job, right? To like clock in and say, okay, for the next 8 hours, I'm going to just do whatever makes me happy for the next 8 hours. And I'm going to work hard at making that profitable, but that's all I'm going to do. Man, that sounds like the dream, right? But the point is that some of us have to make decisions to work at jobs that and do our job well, but work hard at jobs that provide. And that's all that they do, is they provide. And you try to do them in such a way that they give you fulfillment. You do them in such a way that you can be proud of yourself for the effort you put into doing that job. But at the same time, I don't want to get lost in the weeds here. I'm just, saying that it's a sacrifice, right? I don't have a day off any day, 7 days a week. I work my job, I do shows. I work my job, I do shows. And then on occasion, I can count the number of times it happens on my hand where I don't have a show, I don't have to work, And even then, my wife will pop up around the side of the wall and be like, what's that? You don't have a show? You don't have to work? Cool. Here, and roll out a list of things that she needs done. Okay, well, we really need to redo the yard. We really need to take down the Christmas things. I'd really like it if you'd wash your car. And if you could, while you're doing that, could you wash my... You know what I mean? And I get it. That's life, right? And that's the way it goes. I'm not, it's fantastic things to complain about is to have things to take care of and things to work on. Anyway, to round it up, all I'm saying is I don't want to have a gun. In an ideal world, you could, like I tell my wife, we don't live in Mayberry, which is cute because she's like, what's Mayberry? My wife's not totally younger than I am. I'm just saying I grew up watching TV and TV Land and shows from the beginning of television, I Love Lucy and the Andy Griffith Show and countless. I mean, my head's so full of TV I couldn't even tell you. But there's a generation right there. Which, on a side note, there's a generation there. I guess Gen Xers are really in that area that have an appreciation for what came before them and what comes after them. Styles of music, genres of music, and I talked a little bit about this, but I'm going to leave it at that. But just to say that, I mean, musicians, comedians, TV shows, Laurel and Hardy, all the, Red Skeleton, just Lucille Ball from the past, right? Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, to comedians that we just an appreciation of all different kind of stuff. And it's a life of analog prior to digital, and then the new world of streamings and all this other kind of stuff. I'm very happy to be in the generation that I am. And I just successfully took a hard left and dived down the rabbit hole and then came out the other end. Anyway, I'm just pissed off that I've got to have an armory in my house of guns and bullets and lock boxes, and it's upsetting. Because in an ideal world, I would not need it. I would leave my front door unlocked, invite the neighbors over, and 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 sleep well at night with no shades or curtains, just whatever, without an alarm system and ring cameras. But my car would never get broken into, and I would never get robbed, and I would never see people dressed up like the Purge outside my door looking for weaknesses and opportunities to take advantage of my family and my home. And even though we hire people, we pay with our taxes to have people protect us, they can't be everywhere at once. And so it bums me out, man. It really does. Okay, well, I know there was I knew once I started talking about that, I was just going to think of other things. So take care of yourself. Comment, send me messages, give me your thoughts about guns, about protecting your home, your family. Your thoughts on people having motives behind their wrongdoing, if any of it's justified. And